All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. So we'll run through the TTI Assessment 2 brief. So this is a presentation and a case study. You're in groups of 2 to 3 students. Now the length of this is your presentation will go for 20 minutes and it should really go for 20 minutes. It shouldn't go for 12 minutes or it shouldn't go for 30 minutes. It should, as close to 20 minutes as you can get it, as per the brief, is definitely recommended. And it should be shared equally amongst your team members. So if there's 2 of you, 10 minutes each. If it's 3 of you, what's that? Just under 8 minutes each. No, 7 minutes each. From
5, 6. Yeah.
Okay, so
I worked it out. I'm like, now what's my time? What do I got to do?
6 minutes and 43 seconds. So that is your presentation part, and then your case study is 1600 plus or minus 10%. So because this is a group assessment, and however many people in the group, you will all submit the exact same work. You will submit the exact same presentation and you will submit the exact same case study, okay? Both pieces of this assessment are intended to be a collaboration with your entire group, okay? Now, with regards to the presentation, we have 3 main ways to do this. I'll run through them quickly now. Nick's probably listed them in announcements. But the first one is that we love it if you can make an appointment with us and do your presentation live. You can share your screen, run through the PowerPoints, and actually do a presentation. So the reason we really love that way, it's more authentic for you as far as presentation skills go. Just because you're online, we don't want you to be disadvantaged by thinking, I don't actually get to do a real presentation. So we love it when you do. I did have someone ask me the other day, do I get extra marks if I do it live? Unfortunately, no, but we get to know you better. We get to chat to you more, interact with you more. It's a more authentic experience for yourself. And we sort of get to give you live feedback, as in, perhaps you spoke really quickly or you didn't speak loud enough, or it's just a great interaction for us. And as facilitators in the online world, anytime we get to interact with our students like I'm doing now with you is very much appreciated. So yeah, if you want to do it that way, please do. The second way to do it is to hook up with your group over Zoom and actually do your presentation live over Zoom and record it. And that's where it's all done in one go. It's all nice and smooth. And again, it's a little bit more authentic. We can see who's speaking. We know who's doing which slides, and it's a little bit more real. The third option, and this is definitely doable, it's our least favorite, but it's okay if you need to do this. And it's usually for people who have really conflicting schedules. I had a couple of groups once where one girl lived in Japan, one girl lived in the UK, and there was another girl in Australia. And they just couldn't sync their times. And I've had it also within Australia where, with daylight saving and busy schedules with, kids and whatnot, it was just too hard for this group to pull everything together. So they recorded their voices on the slides. So let's say I was doing slides 1 to 4 and 9 to 11. I would record my presentation, save it, send it through to my group members. You would record your presentation on your slides and then probably listen to it once to make sure it's all coherent. And then you've all got a copy to sort of submit. Okay, so those are the 3 main ways that we get you to do your presentation. So this one's due in week 14. Regardless of however you decide to do your presentation, it has to be submitted on the Sunday of week 14. If you do wish to do a live presentation, book that in for any time during week 15, okay, as long as it's submitted by the correct deadline. Your presentation is worth 15% and your case study is worth 15%. So really even marks there. They're both as important as each other. So that's that kind of idea of it. And when you submit it, like I said, you will submit the exact same copy of your presentation and case study. And you'll need to have 2 attachments to your submission. One will be your PowerPoint, one will be your case study. And there may even be one, if you're recording it, there's an actual Zoom recording link as well, depending on how files work and everything. And just back on the group work as well, before I move on, you would have been sent, or it would have been attached to the announcements, a group evaluation form. So we really want you to fill in that group evaluation form. Couple of reasons. Group work can be a little hit and miss. We acknowledge that, but the idea behind it is that in the industry, we're always working in groups. Sometimes those groups work really well, sometimes they don't. So it's a great learning experience to be in a group, even if I know it can be stressful, that if perhaps you end up being the leader, that's an awesome experience for you. And you make sure that you put that on your feedback form. When you do your group evaluation, you are evaluating yourself as well as your other group members. No one will see that form except for your facilitators. So we need you to be as honest as you possibly can. If you're praising someone, be honest. If someone didn't pull their weight and didn't contribute, be honest about that as well, okay? Mm-hmm. So moving on, basically, as you work your way through reading the brief, it gives you some very clear instructions on what to do. So the first part, and something that I think is probably a good place to start, is mapping out your presentation. Okay, and then once you've got the basics of your presentation together, you can build your case study from there. Now that's 100% personally up to you. I've just seen this assessment presented in our classrooms many times, and that's how I've seen students successfully pull it together. Okay, try to share the work equally and be very collaborative in the beginning of this process. If you split it up and go, well, you go and look at that and you go and look at that right from the beginning, you're not going to have a cohesive presentation or a cohesive case study. So try to work through it together and really come up with your ideas together before you break off and start working on individual parts. So in your presentation, and this is a great format to follow for your when you're mapping out your presentation, it's pretty much all listed for you here. So the first thing you want to do is introduce to the customer scenario. So you would have all been given a scenario to focus on.
Yes.
Actually, just backtracking ever so slightly, one question I get asked a lot with this assessment is students ask, who is my audience? Who am I presenting to? Am I just presenting to this one person? Because it seems like overkill for 3 people in a group to sit and talk to one client, or maybe, a couple going on a cruise or something. So my answer to that is that you can be a little bit creative with who your audience is. A couple of examples are, you may be working for a travel agency and you've seen a lot of people ask for this similar holiday. The elderly couple going cruising, or the young couple wanting to go and do volunteer work. So you could present it as a bit like an information session, an information evening to your clients. As, look, I'm going to use Bob and Jack as an example. We've had a lot of inquiry recently for adventure travel in Peru for people over 60, and this is trending at the moment. And so you've all inquired, or you're on our database for similar types of inquiries with us. So we're going to share with you an itinerary that we've done for this particular client. So you can set it up like that. You can set it up as a bit of a training session for travel agents. Similar sort of setup. We've noticed in our area, we're getting tons of Gen Z wanting to go on cruises. So what we've done is we've pulled together information about that trend and options for their travel. We're going to present that to you tonight in the hope that when you start getting those inquiries, you'll be able to know more about it and have some more information. Does that sort of make sense as far as who the audience is?
Yes, definitely. Having that, going into that character mode, or can you hear me? Yep.
You need a bit of context sometimes, or you can even talk directly to the customer. You can go, you know what, Harry and Megan, we know that you want to take this honeymoon, and my wonderful consultants and I have put together these options for you. Boom.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Yep. So we want a very clear introduction of the customer scenario. And we want to know, when you read that scenario, really break it down. Don't skim over it and go, oh yeah, I know what they want. Really look at it, break it down, circle the key words, really think about who those people are, who those customers are, what are they wanting, where are they in their stage of life, how old are they, what are they wanting to achieve on their holiday. And then moving into B, it says identify the travel trend that is occurring in the scenario, and a minimum of 2 possible recommendations that could meet your customer needs. Okay, so we want 2 sort of general recommendations that will meet the needs of your customer. They don't have to be at this stage too specific, because in point C, you're going to only choose one of those recommendations and go into that particular recommendation in a lot of detail. So don't go into both of them really, really in depth, only to then just discard one. Okay, so we want to know 2 options of what you've considered for your customer. They could be 2 very, very completely separate itineraries, or the shell of your itinerary may be similar. Let's say it's someone who's wanting to travel to Europe, for example, and do a coach tour. You might have the actual shell of their holiday the same, but you might give 2 options for possible coach tours that they could do. Okay. If it's a cruise, you might choose 2 completely different cruises on opposite ends of the country, or you might choose 2 cruises that are going to the exact same location, but they're with different brands that offer different features and benefits for that particular customer. Okay. So then we want you to choose one of your recommendations and justify why it is the best suited to the customer. Okay, so we want to know, what is it? What's included in it? If it's a coach tour, if it's a cruise, if it's a volunteer holiday, you know, what are all the details that they're really going to need to know? And that leads into B a little bit here as well. Outline the features and benefits of this product and discuss why it is the preferred option for this customer. Okay, so a feature is something that's listed in the brochure. A benefit is a value to the customer of that feature. So if a hotel has a business center and a fax, free Wi-Fi, a business center and a conference room, that's only a benefit to me if I'm a business traveler. Okay, if I'm traveling with my kids and my husband or the girls on a long weekend, I don't really care about their business center. So that's not a benefit to me. So think about who your customer is and the product that you've chosen for them and what is really going to benefit them. What are they asking for in their scenario, and what can you link from that scenario back to that product, and really be confident in knowing that that's the right option for that customer. Still with me?
Yes.
Describe relevant key insights or attractions that the customer will visit on the holiday. So really go into it, really sell it to them, tell them the main things. Keep in mind though, you've only got a limited number of slides and you've only got 15 to 20 minutes. I have seen some of these where people have gone into everything that happens every 30 minutes on a cruise, or every single thing that's going to happen on a 57-day tour of Europe. Okay, so be selective. You might want to hit the highlights. Okay, it does say key sites or attractions, so make sure that the customer is getting good information. It doesn't have to be a ton of information. And now we start getting into the trend. So identify and explain a trend that the customer would experience with this type of product. Okay, now in each one of your modules for TTI, where we cover air, accommodation, cruise, I can't think of any others. I think they're the main 3. There's always a trend section in your module. So you may start there by trying to find some information about trends. There's also an entire module on trends in module 6. But keep in mind, you can also go outside the box. You don't have to stick to what is in Blackboard. We love it when you research and do some extra work and go outside of what we've provided you. But that's a good sort of starting base to start linking together, thinking about who the people are. Is it a behavioral trend, or is it related to the sector? Is it a trend that we're seeing in cruising, or a trend that we're seeing in coach tours or something? So we want you to consider and recommend any additional requirements the customer may need to ensure their travel experience. So if someone wants to go to Europe on a coach tour and you're a travel agent in Australia selling them this holiday, how are they going to get there? What do they need? What's the reality of them taking the trip? Really put yourself in their shoes as a traveler of what they're going to need to make that happen, and really pull together a fairly comprehensive sort of offering for them that encompasses everything they're going to need to successfully go on this amazing holiday. And that leads into the next one here. Organise a detailed itinerary showcasing dates, destination highlights, activities and tours. So again, keep in mind, if your tours are for a long period of time, if it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks, you don't have to do that day by day. You might sort of start with your departure, and then you may have 4 days Paris, 3 days Rome with a couple of highlights, okay? Just be mindful of how much time you have to cover off on that information. And then this is a really good one. This is where you get to think out the square and be a little bit creative. So alternative offerings or travel enhancements that may interest the customer. If they're traveling for a really special occasion, what's something you could offer them to beef that up? You know, something in their room, a fancy transfer, some sort of a surprise, you know. If they're traveling somewhere that's long distance and they're transiting another country, would it be worthwhile considering them having a stop in that transit point? Or, you know, really think about how you can value add to their holiday and really enhance the itinerary that you're pulling together for them. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've got sort of the basis of your presentation, that is a great building block for you to then move into your group case study report. Because you can see here, it's broken down into what does the customer really want? So it's kind of like a breakdown of the scenario in a way and understanding your customer. Travel products, what options would suit the customer? That's really sort of really considering, and now's your opportunity perhaps to go into a little bit more detail on both offerings, if the word count permits you to. What options would suit that customer? What are the travel products available to them? And then what's your recommended travel solution? Why would it suit the customer? This is where you're up here justifying why you've chosen that one option for your customer and what are the features and benefits of it. And then the trend, the impact of the trend. What if more travel was experienced this way? That's where you're sort of tying in this idea of the trend up here in B into their holiday and discussing that. So you can see that the case study is a more detailed version of your presentation as such. So there's a few other little things there. They've got the presentation here, pretty much what I've just outlined, but keep in mind it's 10 to 16 slides. If you find yourself at 16 slides and you haven't yet done your references, I'm very happy for you to add one additional slide to do your references. If you really want to go to that 16 and you can't live without it, add your reference list on slide number 17. Okay. So again, that sort of breaks down those A, B, C, D, E, F, G up above. A little bit more information here on your case study about it having a table of contents. With the introduction, my suggestion with introductions is usually to write them at the end. The introduction is intended to tell the reader what they are about to read, and that can be hard to do when you haven't written anything. So focus on your main body and all of those points outlined in the brief, and then you can go back and do your introduction. And your conclusion is also a really good summary of what you've just talked about. You shouldn't be introducing any new information at all in your conclusion. It's a pulling together of all of the points that you've made in the rest of your case study. And so then we get down here to the rubric. So I'm going to start from the bottom here. Teamwork, 10%. That's why we love those group evaluation forms filled in. It's really hard for us to evaluate teams unless they've sort of been in touch with us throughout the journey. If you want to CC Nicolette or myself in on your communications and how often you're catching up and that sort of thing, you're very welcome to. That way we can sort of see what you're doing. You certainly don't have to do that. But you can see there that 10% is allocated to your teamwork. So we want to know, works well together, renegotiates responsibilities. And listen, I have even had a couple of groups be a little cheeky, and I quietly think this is a really good idea where we've asked them at the end of their presentation, what do you think? If you were me, what would you give me for teamwork? And we've had a range of answers from, well, you know, I didn't really do as much as I should have, so I'd probably just pass me, whereas, you know, Mary, she did everything, so I think she deserves a distinction. So if we don't happen to see you live for your call, by all means, pop that on your group evaluation sheet if you want to mark yourself for teamwork, and we'll take that into consideration, okay? Next bit here, effective communication, including verbal and written material. So to get a credit here, we want information, arguments, and evidence are well presented, mostly clear flow of ideas and arguments. The audience is mostly engaged. The line of reasoning is easy to follow. Effective use of presentation aids. The text is clearly expressed. There are some spelling and grammar errors, and explanations and recommendations are mostly logical and clear. So I would really expect this as the basis of your case study and your presentation. And that's just a matter of it making sure it's well written, there's no spelling mistakes, it flows really well, it makes sense, you're not jumping all over the place. Even if you are changing speakers between slides, make sure that it's coherent and that you're sort of feeding off each other a little bit and perhaps introducing the next person into the next slide and that type of thing. So we want to know that you can communicate with us effectively, both verbally and in writing. Okay. The analysis of information provided to support the case study. So numerous relevant resources are analysed to support the case study. So this is your research from your modules and your essential readings, but also anything else you can do to really develop mostly the trend side of this assessment. It's called Travel Trends and Insights. It's not called recommending 2 products and writing a big long itinerary, okay? So think about the trends. That's what we really want you to really think about in this subject. What's happening in the travel and tourism industry, and now is, you know, a weird time to be reflecting on that. I'm very aware, having said that now. But, you know, in general, just think about, you know, what's happening, where's it going, what do different generations need, what do different products give people, where are things evolving to? And if you are giving your personal opinion, make sure it's backed up by something. That's the whole point of in-text referencing. So if you want to say, you know, oh, we're getting lots of inquiry for, you know, teenagers going cruising, have you got some data to support that you can put in there as a reference and to really give credibility to what you're saying? And then up here, first part of the rubric, always the same, knowledge and understanding, both technical and theoretical. So we want a thorough knowledge or understanding of the tourism sectors. We want to see that that is evident and has been applied appropriately to the case studies. The answers provided include most main aspects demonstrating its importance for a broad understanding. Okay, so this is where you're talking about the different sectors that will be involved. Again, with the trends, show knowledge of your trend. Have you understood exactly what who your customer is and what they need? Have you followed the brief and presented what was asked of you? Have you given 2 options and chosen one and gone into that in a lot of depth? Okay, so that's that sort of rubric side of it there. And that's about it, really. Clear as well. Yeah?
Yep.
Yep, sounds
too much information.
It's like I know these things individually, but it's then collaborating it
and pulling it all together. Down. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
you'll be fine.
Just being online.
Yeah. Of course. Well, what we do offer you is a group coaching call. So once you get started on this, really analyze your scenario, start pulling a few things together. If you want to have another catch up with Nick or I online over Zoom and tell us what you've got and run through it with us, ask us some questions. We're sort of sometimes with these assessments a bit between a rock and a hard place as far as, you know, we're not going to go, yeah, that's amazing.
You don't want to tell us what to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you're asking us questions that are, you know, quite specific and we will point you in the right direction. So if you're concerned, by all means, reach out. But really, these briefs are very detailed, but that's actually to your advantage. Don't let that scare you. Really read those briefs and follow those points. They're very, very well mapped out to go, this is what we want in your presentation. You know, it actually tells you here, introduction of the customer scenario, explanation of the customer needs, detailed recommendations that have been made, highlighting benefits. You know, it's actually telling you what to do there. So just really read the brief carefully and dissect that customer scenario. Brainstorm together. Who are the customers? What do they want? What are the sectors that they're going to be using in this particular scenario based on where they want to go? And what are some of the trends that we're seeing in those sectors or we're seeing with those particular generations? And I think you'll find you can really start pulling it together from there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Lovely.
Well, I've done a similar assessment because I do a Bachelor of Business.
Yes, you're cutting in and out, but